Let's go to the Chargers. Let's go there. Boy, what a disaster.
But not least.
What a disaster that was last year for the Chargers. What a disaster. Brandon Staley gets fired mid-season after giving up 63 points to the Raiders on a Thursday night. You end up with Justin Herbert breaking a finger on his throwing hand, and it amounts to a calamity for the Chargers, for lack of a better word, for LA, a team that a lot of expectations of making the postseason for the Chargers and ends up with 5 wins. And you're in a scenario here where the Chargers, at least coaching staff-wise, made, to me, the biggest splash of anyone in the way of head coaching hires. And he's not listed in the additions, but he's listed as the favorite in the Coach of the Year market, and that's Jim Harbaugh, fresh off his national championship at Michigan. We know Jim Harbaugh had a lot of success with the Niners, never could win the Lombardi, but in the NFC title game 3 straight years, his first 3 years, nearly won a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick, probably should have been in the Super Bowl with Alex Smith, a roster that the Niners were a disaster for a decade before he got there. And now he inherits the Chargers, who had a lot more talent than those Niner teams did that he inherited. You do have to look at the bottom there, Alex, though, where you look at the departures. Most of the production from forget just last year, the last half decade is all gone. Austin Eckler, now a Washington Commander. Keenan Allen, now a Chicago Bear. Mike Williams, now a New York Jet. They also lose a stalwart on the offensive line, Corey Linsley, who didn't play last year but officially retires now because of an internal issue. You draft Joe Alt to play the other tackle across from Rashawn Slater. You sign Bradley Bozeman inside. You signed the Ravens running backs to be your running backs. There are a lot of questions, but Justin Herbert's still there, and I think the Chargers go from a bottom 3 coach to a top 5 coach, and that's a huge difference in this league.
It really is. This team is probably the toughest to handicap because their ceiling is so high with Harbaugh stepping in there. There's also rumors that Justin Herbert was the quarterback that he wanted if he were to go back to the NFL, which makes a lot of sense. Passing yards and completions, he's ranked the most in the NFL history through a player's first 4 seasons and tied with Mahomes as the second most through a player's first 4 seasons. So it is really interesting. He does have a very high ceiling. We haven't seen all that Justin Herbert can become. But like you mentioned, that departures list is a little bit scary, and you don't know what we're going to get out of them offensively right away. Of course, they did add some really good running backs there with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, and their OC originally with Harbaugh, then went to John Harbaugh and the Ravens, now back with Jim here in the Chargers. So they have worked together before, work well together. So it's hard. It's very high ceiling. We just don't know where we're going to fall in between there.
You know, the wide receiver core, just the pass catching core, because also not even listed. Gerald Everett now granted, I don't know if that's a huge deal, but some may think it is. Their top 3 receivers going into the year: Quentin Johnston, who had a very rough rookie year last year; Joshua Palmer, who I think is a perfectly good number 3. I don't know if you need him to do more than that, if he's where he would land on that regard. They drafted Ladd McConkey at the top of the 2nd round out of Georgia. I think McConkey as a slot receiver actually translates pretty well to the NFL. He also signed DJ Chark, who we know has made an impact at time. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. Tight end room's totally different now. Hayden Hurst, Will Disley brought in. So there are a lot of questions. The one thing I do know, though, is I feel very confident in this offensive line, even though it's slightly reworked. You draft Joe Alt, who I thought was far and away the best offensive lineman in this draft. He's going to actually play right tackle because Rashawn Slater, and I think part of the reason the Chargers didn't have success last year was Slater was hurt and missed basically the whole season. You get Slater back, you get Alt back, you get Alt in for the first time. I like Trey Pipkins at right guard. I think Bozeman, over the collection of guys they had last year because of the issue with Linsley, is a big improvement at center. So they're building this right. They're building this in the trenches.
Right.
Justin Herbert was running for his life the majority of last year. So Herbert's got a weird resume so far. Stats are awesome. No playoff wins. For 3 seasons ago now, Staley's first year, so I guess that is technically 2 seasons ago, I thought they were one of the most talented teams in the NFL, and they missed the playoffs completely. Obviously, that infamous game for them where they lose to the Raiders the final game of the regular season, where we almost ended with a tie. The year after that, obviously the historic collapse against Jacksonville in the postseason game, and then last year the abject disaster. I just want to see if Justin Herbert takes the full leap forward. If Justin Herbert takes another leap forward, and you can throw the schedule up there, Sean, they have a win total of 9. I'm not saying they're going to win the division because Kansas City's still better than they are, and still, I don't want to say vastly, but the gap is still large. But this team with that schedule, where, guess what? You should start 3-0 with that schedule if you're that talented. You should beat the Raiders in your building. I know it'll be mostly Raider fans in LA, but you should win that game. You should go on the road cross country and beat Carolina week 2. And then I think the Chargers are much more talented than Pittsburgh. It's just a matter of the intangibles, as we know, with the Steelers showing up more so than anything. That should be a 3-0 start, where that game against Kansas City is a gigantic deal for this team. And after that, look at the next 3 games after the bye.
Right.
Denver, lowest power-rated team in the AFC for me, and one of the bottom 2 for you. The Cardinals, not a good team, even though they're pesky. Game against New Orleans, they're better than New Orleans before that game against Cleveland. This is a very manageable schedule for the most part, where winning 10, 11 games is in play if things go right. And if Harbaugh's as good as I think he is, I think the Chargers will be in the postseason when this is all said and done, taking a vast leap from last year's disaster.
You're right. I was looking at that as well. The very, very favorable schedule, especially early on those first 7 weeks. I mean, really just the Chiefs is the only one that was a big postseason team from last year. So is there any bets out there? Did you find one for the Chargers just to make the playoffs? Because I'm not interested in the division. I think 9 is too high to make a bet on a team with so many question marks and how they're going to mesh together. But anything with the playoffs.
If you can get plus money, I would go ahead and do it. I would absolutely do it. Now, this goes back to what we were talking about yesterday with this conference. At least I believe that 12 of the 16 have capabilities of making the playoffs. We mentioned 2 of them that don't, the Raiders and the Broncos for me. Also, the Patriots, who we'll get to later this week. And then I'm going to throw Tennessee in there. I think they're just too much to overcome, even though we'll get them on Friday. Very weird offseason, all things considered, for the Titans. But I don't think they're good enough to realistically make the postseason just yet with Will Levis. But this schedule, I mean, my goodness, this is the benefit of having a last place schedule.
That's right.
Where the only bad break they would have drawn would have been, hey, we have to play Cincinnati because the Bengals finished in last in the AFC North. But you're already playing the AFC North as it is anyway. So you're getting the Bengals anyway. Oh, and by the way, you get the Ravens and the Bengals at home, who are the 2 best teams in that division. Now, we know there's almost a 0 home field in LA for the Chargers, but you got teams traveling cross country. So we know not particularly easy to be done even in the modern day of great private travel for these NFL teams. I think this schedule is unbelievably manageable. I don't love going over 9. I agree with you. It's a big number, but I do see 10 wins, maybe even 11 for this Charger team. And they end up getting into the postseason just on the virtue of a weaker schedule, a top 5 coach. And if Justin Herbert's just a top 7 guy, quarterback-wise, that's enough. Even with the quote-unquote lack of weapons around him. I think the weapons are good enough in the offense they're going to run.
And 9 seems like a very high number right now, but looking at those first few weeks, if they do start off to a hot start, it's just going to keep moving up.
It's really that a week 11 through week 14 stretch. Bengals, Ravens, at the Falcons, at the Chiefs. Very difficult.
That is tough.
Very difficult. Could go 0-4. But if they get out of that, somehow get out of it with 1, and somehow get 2-2, they're going to be in prime position going into that last month where they only play 1 team that I think will be in the mix. And that's Tampa going into the last month of the season.
It'll be exciting. I'm excited to have Harbaugh back in the NFL.
It is, it's so interesting with him because I know people like to hate on the guy because he's a weirdo. Let's be real. He's a weirdo.
He's goofy.
He's a weird guy. But he is a tremendous football coach any way you slice it. Been in the Super Bowl with average quarterback. won a national championship at Michigan. Remember, they were ready to run him out after the 2020 season. No, takes the pay cut, makes the playoffs 3 straight years.
Okay.
The man is a great coach. And especially with the end of it, maybe the act will run thin 3, 4, 5 years from now, like it did in San Francisco. But right away, that impact will be there. Again, this is Harbaugh winning coach of the year. I don't mind that. I don't love taking a short shot in the market, but you're still getting 10-1.
Right.
Chargers win 11 games. Harbaugh probably going to have at least have a great shot of winning that
Yes.
award. At least being one of the final 2 or 3 to win that award. The team I like, which means I'm sure I'll be aggravated when we roll the week 5 when they're on their bye week and like, what was I thinking when the Chargers are 1-3 with all this talent and this great coach? Just knowing the Chargers' history, they still have that to get over. Hi everyone, I'm Jeff Parles.
And I'm Alex White. Thank you for watching this clip of Sports by the Book. Please like the video, comment, and subscribe.
We live stream the show right here every day on this channel. Also, you can catch the podcast version on your favorite podcast platform.
All the links are in the description below. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.